Hey everyone, welcome to Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce. We're coming to you as always courtesy of our broadcasting partner, moretalk.tv. And we've reached that time of year again when we take some time to reflect back on a few of my favorite guest interviews from 2014. As we look back at another year full of spiritual growth and deeper understanding of all that is, together we look forward to what's to come in 2015. To me, 2014 was a challenging year full of opportunities to clear out the old to make room for the new. As 2015 is now upon us, I'm excited and hopeful for the opportunities that lie ahead of us all on our unique paths. When Cayce was once asked by one of the thousands of seekers who requested readings whether the new year will unfold greater opportunities for their professional development and greater service to their fellow man, Cayce responded by stating, "These are part of self's own development and must rise within by taking advantage of those opportunities which are offered from day to day." In saying this, Cayce is encouraging us and empowering us to always go within for the strength and guidance needed to gain a deeper understanding of the purpose of incarnating at such a special time. He reminds us in the readings that we are constantly meeting self in our interaction with all those around us. A blessing for those who have the eyes to see and the mind to reflect upon what our world is attempting to show us. What we may perceive and react to with resistance in the material world just may be our greatest teacher should we remain mindful and embrace opportunity to reflect and grow in depth of understanding. I'm always reminded of one of my favorite quotes that states with certainty that every moment is the guru. Every moment of our lives is the manifestation of elegantly woven wisdom teaching, just waiting for our recognition and reaction. As we embrace another year of opportunity and enlightenment, I encourage all to remain relentlessly optimistic in our pursuit of a love-filled life. With the new year comes new opportunity to rededicate ourselves to our ideals, remembering that we are gifted always with the present moment, the now. Should we choose to embrace change, pushing through the fear and adversity, we are supported in our endeavors by God, by the universe, by spirit, and by all those who love and respect us here on planet Earth. It's never too late to rededicate ourselves to a path of healing, a path of service, a path that helps us make the world a better place simply by living in it. As a new year begins, we honor the work of great souls like Edgar Cayce and countless others who dedicated their lives to being of service. May we find the strength to inspire others as we humbly stand on the shoulders of all these giants. On behalf of everyone here at moretalk.tv and Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment, I wish everyone a passionate and peaceful 2015. Please enjoy with me in reflecting back on some of my favorite shows from the past year. Please enjoy. Jim, thank you so much for joining us on Reflections today.
Well, it's my privilege too. I love having the opportunity to talk about the universe, all the wonders out there with anyone that will listen.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you on. I want to start with the first question of how did you first get involved with the ARE?
Well, had a long interest in it, just reading Cayce material along with a lot of other esoteric things, and I was fascinated, about his background, and I really believe that and still do, that he was probably the greatest psychic that ever lived. Anyway, but I started lecturing there over 25 years ago. The first conference was called "We Are Not Alone." It was about extraterrestrial life, and from that point on, I've been coming once or twice a year ever since.
That's wonderful. We're glad to have you. And I want to talk a little bit about your latest book. It's entitled Celebrating the Universe, the Spirituality and Science of Stargazing. And I'm curious, how did this book come about?
Well, Brent, it's I think an amazing story. For over 25 years, I've been trying to get it published. Every few months, I'd try another publisher, all the mainstream ones and New Age ones, and I either got total silence or not interested, and once in a while I'd get a comment that it's way ahead of its time. But I'm persistent, so I kept sending this out and kept getting rejections. It kind of reminds me of James Michener's story. Anyway, I finally decided my last attempt was to send it to Hayes, who, of course, publishes Wayne Dyer and many other, well-known speakers and writers. And I got an immediate automated reply saying, we no longer accept unsolicited manuscripts, and also you need an agent. And I said, okay, I'll try again in a few more months. Well, 3 days later, I get an email from a woman there. She said, I don't know how this happened, but your proposal ended up on my desk. She says, I studied astronomy at Caltech, and I love astronomy. She took it to the president and CEO, Reed Tracy, and they accepted it and decided to publish it. So I think the time finally did come right. It was the right time to have this happen.
Right, absolutely. And what was the process of writing this book for you? It seems like you said it was a long, drawn-out process. What was that journey like?
Well, it was frustrating at times, again, because I couldn't get a publisher. Actually, writing the book was based on my, pushing 60 years of stargazing time, 20,000 hours at the telescope and binoculars and so on. And I'm a freak as far as collecting quotes, all kinds of quotations, thousands of them in my files about the universe and things related to it. So actually writing the book was maybe a year process, but it had been churning around in my mind for quite a long time. And once I got the okay from Hayes, I really dove into it, and less than a year later, the book was ready to be published.
That's wonderful. And were you always a stargazer as a child? Was this something that you were always drawn to?
Yeah, I was born as a stargazer. 5 years old, I knew I wanted to do something with the stars, and my uncle came over one night when I was 8 years old and showed me the moon and Jupiter through his telescope. I went totally bananas, running up and down the streets, pounding on everybody's door, getting them to come out, and I kind of got the title of celestial evangelist because of that, and then went on to build my first telescope when I was 12. So it's been a lifelong, not only an avocation, but later on it became my profession.
That's wonderful. And amongst the ARE family, you are known for bringing your telescopes to all of your lectures. And of course, if the weather's permitting, you take everybody outside to do some stargazing. What has it been like experiencing that with the ARE community?
Well, the frustration is the weather, and if you could,
Right.
when we have had clear nights, it's been absolutely exhilarating. People have broken into tears seeing the beauty of things we're looking at, explanations of delight. Oh my God, look at this! Is this real? I can show all the incredible images you want from the Hubble Space Telescope, which I do in my programs, and that's updated constantly, all the latest images. But seeing the real thing, getting those photons in your eye from the real thing, is what really electrifies people. So when we've been lucky enough to get a clear night, it's been wonderful for them.
Absolutely.
And for me.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, your new book is called Celebrating the Universe, which begs the question one might ask, why should we celebrate the universe?
Well, that is a good question, and many people have. The great writer Ray Bradbury said he came to celebrate. Gerard Manley Hopkins said, what I do is me. For this I came to celebrate. But Brent, the key thing here is that you and I are children of the stars. We are literally made of stardust. If you take a moment and touch one of your fingernails right now, the calcium in that fingernails, in your teeth and bones, the blood, the iron in the blood flowing through your bloodstreams, the the carbon that makes up all of our cells. In fact, the potassium that's in your brain, so people can understand this program, all came from within the cores of dying stars, exploding stars eons ago. We're literally made of stardust, and many of us believe in this field that our destiny is to return to the stars. Even Edgar Cayce did talk about that, to back to the source. So we should celebrate the universe.
I couldn't agree more. And in celebrating the universe, going about that process, do we need a telescope? Is that a requirement to enjoy stargazing?
Not at all. You can see examples of every major class of celestial objects, obviously from the moon and the sun and the planets, but all the way out to galaxies. You can see several naked eye galaxies like the one in Andromeda, or our own Milky Way galaxy, of course. Then when you turn a pair of binoculars onto the heavens, it's just like opens a whole new universe to you. But no, just unaided eye. That's how astronomy was done for countless centuries, as you know, and many discoveries were made without a telescope.
Absolutely. And I want to dive in a couple of topics that you touch on in your latest book. One in particular is, what is the bicosmos that you talk about in the book?
That's actually the biocosmos, and bio meaning, of course, life. And the universe is, we're absolutely convinced. In fact, there's very much strong evidence. I'll be making a couple announcements at the Ancient Mysteries Conference about discoveries just made this past week. But
Oh, wow.
the universe is teeming with life. As Thomas Carlyle said, if nobody else is out there, what a waste of space. But we don't think the creator of the universe wasted any space on us, just us. And the amazing thing is, Brenton, and this isn't a guess, this has been done statistically many times on Cray 3 supercomputers, for example. If you were to count every single grain of sand on all the beaches and all the deserts on the entire planet Earth, when you were done, you'd be nowhere near, it's a factor of 10, nowhere near the number of stars we can now see with our largest telescopes. And stars are suns, and they all, we now know, have planets as part of their natural birth process. So, as they say on Star Trek, it's a big universe, Mr. Scott, and there's probably life teeming everywhere. The average star we see in our Milky Way galaxy is anywhere from 5 to 10 billion years older than the sun.
Wow.
So if life began there, it's got to be advanced if it's still there.
Yeah, it really is so mind-expanding to think in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
what
love
is
it when we're at Virginia Beach, to take people down to the beach and just have them pick up handfuls of sand, let it trickle through their fingers, and realize that for every one of those sand grains, there's a star shining out there.
That's amazing. And Virginia Beach is a special place for that. When the weather's clear, it's wonderful to stargaze out on the beach.
Absolutely, it is. And Brent, I have a quote here I might share with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about why should we celebrate in the universe being alive. It's from the author Donald Miller, and he said, "I sometimes look into the endless heavens, the cosmos of which we can't find the edge, and ask God what it means. Do you really do all of this to dazzle us? Do you really keep it shifting, rolling around the pinions of stars to stave off boredom? God forbid your glory would be our distraction, and God forbid we would ignore your glory. How can we not celebrate the universe?"
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And keeping in your latest book, what is the photon connection that you talk about?
Well, this is pretty amazing, and it's something that we sophisticated adults kind of overlook. I've had children realize, oh, yes, that's obvious. And that is simply the fact that we see things by the photons of light they emit. And as you know, photons are very strange. They have a dual nature. They behave as waves, but they also behave as particles. I like to think of it as particles traveling in waves. And so when you look out at night at a star, and you don't need a telescope or even binoculars, just pick a star. The light you see, which came from the core of that star where the thermonuclear reactions are occurring, those photons came out of the star and traveled across the immensity of time and space and ended their journey on the retina of your eye as you're looking at it. So the bottom line here is you're actually in direct physical contact. Particles from that star are hitting the retina of your eye. As Sarah Teasdale said, I know I'm honored to be witness of so much majesty. So that's amazing. When you look at the universe, you're connecting with it directly, physically.
Absolutely. And I think the whole overarching theme of what we're talking about is having this cosmic perspective, which for me is just something that really keeps me balanced and keeps me grounded, and it puts your own life in perspective, and especially your own problems. I know people stress constantly about little things, and I think when you have that cosmic perspective, it really helps a lot. And of course, your late friend and mentor, Carl Sagan, who is very well known, always talked about why this was so important. And can you touch about why it's so important in your life to keep that cosmic perspective?
Oh, yes. Given the insanity of the world we're living in today, the society, civilization, I put that in quotes, civilization. Anyway,
Right.
You do need to be balanced, and you do need to realize that there is order out there, and we see a lot of chaos here on the earth. And as Sagan pointed out, and he was really right about it, if we don't channel our energies into something beyond us, exploring the universe, we're going to self-destruct. We're going to use that energy to destroy ourselves. So, Brenda, I meant to mention, I always tell my audiences that I'm just, and I mean this sincerely, a humble stargazer. You can't possibly have a big head and be an astronomer as you look out in the immensity of the universe. And as you said, it really gives you the perspective of where we are and how small we are. And yet, in our smallness, we have the capacity to understand this amazing universe.
Right. It's a very powerful tool, and I'm so very happy that you stress that cosmic perspective, because I think it's one thing that can really help to shift people's lives.
Yes, and that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked a little bit about Carl Sagan and this cosmic perspective, and I understand that you were an advisor for the original Cosmos series by Carl Sagan.
Well, not an advisor, but I did contribute some of my writings he used in one of the episodes, and I considered him a friend and definitely a mentor. But that was an honor just to have part of something I had, some things I had written included in the script. That was the original Cosmos, of course, not the remake.
Right. And what's your opinion on the remake? Have you gotten a chance to indulge?
Oh yes, and I know Neil deGrasse Tyson well, and he told me several years ago when they decided to redo the Cosmos that Carl's shoes are big shoes to fill, and he was right. And Neil did a great job. My complaint was that unless you were fortunate to get a channel that didn't have ads, see, the original Cosmos was on PBS, no ads,
right.
And I kind of expected that. And we unfortunately had to watch it on Fox, and it was just one violent commercial after another. To the point that it just broke up the script, I thought.
Yeah, I could see that, absolutely.
That's a personal opinion, but I was unhappy about that, but the content was good.
Yeah. Well, I love PBS. I think we all could agree on that. And I wanted to talk about your book, Edgar Cayce and the Cosmos. And you mentioned in this book that only 2 stars really came up in the readings, and these were Polaris and, of course, Arcturus, which you talk quite a bit about. And you also put special significance on the repeated mentioning of Arcturus. Can you tell us about what you found about this repeated reference to this star?
Well, Arcturus is certainly one of the brightest stars in the sky. I believe it's the 3rd brightest in the northern hemisphere. A beautiful golden orange star, visible all spring into early summer. And Edgar Cayce himself, in one of his readings, said he had gone there twice. He had actually made 2 journeys there, and he called it the Stargate. Which is pretty amazing, I think, he saw that as an entrance to other realms. So Arcturus is really very special.
Absolutely. And you reference Cayce as talking about the music of the spheres in his readings, which I think is something that is so incredible. And I've found a connection with a few other people who refer to the music of the spheres, which you point out yourself. What does this reference to the music of the spheres mean to you? And I understand that you have related it to recent findings of black holes as well, which is incredibly fascinating.
That's right. In the Bible, for example, in Job, it talks about the morning stars singing together when the earth was created, and that was all taken to be just poetic license. But it turns out that using Cray supercomputers and giant radio telescopes and Moog synthesizers, that it's been discovered that some of the stars are giving off harmonics. They're giving off, which when it's converted to sound, sounds like music. So there is music coming from the stars, and others like Kepler, the great astronomer Kepler, constantly talked about that, the rhythm of the planets, their harmonies and so on. But yes, it's been discovered that some black holes, amazingly, are giving off a musical note. It's B flat, which is the tone or note that a saxophone is tuned to. So it's one of the folks in my audience at the ARE said, well, God turns out to be a sax player. But it's amazing that there is music coming from the universe. We're just too deaf to hear it.
Absolutely. That's incredible. And it has such far-reaching implications when I know there's a new field of music therapy where they're using different tones to work on healing parts of the body, which, of course, could be directly related.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Yeah. Welcome back to Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce. Joining me today on the show is astronomer, lecturer, and author Jim Mullaney, and we are talking about everything about the cosmos. And Jim, we've been talking a lot about Hubble, and I know this is something very near and dear to you. Being attending a couple of your lectures, you show some of the most brilliant Hubble pictures. I had a personal question. I was told the other day by somebody just in conversation that eventually we will stop getting pictures from the Hubble because I guess because of the distance that it's traveling away from us. Is this true?
No, that's not the reason, Brent. Hubble's in orbit, so it's not moving away from us. It's
Okay.
lack of funding. And in fact, the
Oh,
Hubble
wow.
almost died a couple times, and citizen outrage finally got the government to put some more money into, updating it and keeping it going. It's our
Right.
window on the universe, and it's an incredible investment. And as long as it's good for a few more years at least before anything goes wrong, hopefully, and hopefully by then we'll be able to go back and service it again. It's a
Right.
priceless instrument that should be kept going as long as possible. And the images
Absolutely.
are just coming in are just more and more incredible as it penetrates. I think what you were mentioning, Brent, it's penetrating deeper and deeper, even though it's still parked in orbit. It's orbiting us, rather,
Right.
orbiting the Earth. So some of the images I'll be showing at the conference, they'll be downloaded from just a few days before. You can't keep up to them. Brent, there's a site for the listeners and viewers that want to go to it. It's very simple. It's www, of course, Hubble site, one word, hubblesite.org. It will pull up the whole universe for you. There's over 7,000 images available to the public on that, millions of research images for researchers, but the ones for the public, you're talking thousands of images. And they should go and click on the gallery. That's where some of the most incredible images are. And you can spend the rest of your life looking at them.
Yeah, absolutely. How many pictures are coming through? Is it like one a day, multiple per day, one a week? Or is there no
Multiple
structure like that
multiple per
really?
day. Yeah. Some of the exposures, though, are so long that weeks may go by before they actually download the image. Those are the
Right.
really deep penetrating ones, but it can vary, and depending on what's going on, there's images of the planets coming through continuously, and they monitor them. So it's a veritable harvest, celestial harvest of wonderful images coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. And as an astronomer, and you have such a wonderful academic background, how did you come about to researching into the Cayce material? What first drew you to that?
Well, you know what? This kind of goes back to why it took so long to get my book published and what's unique about it. I've always approached science, and I've been trained in physics as well as astronomy from a spiritual perspective. And for example, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of books out there on how to look at the sky, what to look at, how to select telescopes, so on. They've all missed the spirituality of the heavens,
Right.
and they've missed the soul of night. So I think that is really crucial that we have this spiritual connection, and that's what's driven me. I mean, I've been in research, I've been in college teaching, and so on, but it's just sharing the beauty of the night sky with as many people as possible. That's what's really important. It's the personal aspect.
Absolutely. And in talking about that, you seem to be really bringing together the science and the spirituality, which I think is a hallmark of the time that we're moving through right now. Is that something that you see as an inevitable event, an inevitable, I don't want to call it a clashing, a blending? Is that something that you see happening more and more?
Oh, absolutely. It's essential to our survival. And science and religion have often pictured as being opposed to each other, but actually, as I like to point out, God, the creator of the universe, is the author of science. And with all our
Right.
technology, we can't make a single blade of grass, or let alone a flower or a tree or a star. And the Vatican, among others, amazingly, is at the forefront of some of this. The Pope John Paul was an amateur astronomer since the age of 11. In fact, Brent, he was using two of my books at his private observatory at Castel Gandolfo. And
Wow.
he commissioned the building of that huge telescope on Mount Graham in Arizona. Most people
Right.
don't even know about it. It is open to the public. It's near the Kitt Peak National Observatory, the next mountain over. And we lovingly call it the Pope Scope because he had commissioned it. So they're very much in tune with the connection between science and religion. As a matter of fact, Brent, I might share this with you. 5 years ago, there was an international conference held at the Vatican Observatory, not the one in Arizona, but their headquarters in Rome. And
Mhm.
the conference theme was astrobiology, the search for life on other worlds. How about that?
Wow. That's incredible. And what is your opinion now? What is the research that you've found about life on other planets?
Well, all the building blocks for life are, well, let me back up. Edgar Cayce is often quoted as saying there's no life out there. That's not true. There were 2 readings where he was asked if there's life, and it was life in our solar system, and his quote was, "No, none like us." And he's right. As far as we know, there's nobody like us in the solar system. But there's billions of solar systems, and throughout his book and his readings, my book and his readings, it's obvious he not only talks about life elsewhere, journeys to various places, but he talks about our cosmic destiny, becoming citizens, one with the citizens of the universe, plural, okay, citizens out there. So there's no question that, again, we're living in a universe teeming with intelligent life.
Absolutely. And are there, you talk a lot about the Cayce readings, and you just have some incredible astronomical and just cosmic quotes from the Cayce readings. And I'd love if you could share a few more that help too, because a lot of people just don't necessarily know that Cayce talked about the number of subjects that he did, and they think about the holistic health aspect and, of course, more the metaphysical aspect. But what quotes do you have from Cayce that are very near and dear to your heart, that are very cosmic in their perspective?
Oh dear, there's so many of them, Brent. I've already read my favorite one about someone owning a telescope, using a telescope that was found in prehistory. That's just
Right.
mind-blowing. But he talks, as you mentioned earlier, about the music of the spheres. There are many, many, many readings about that, about listening to the music of the spheres. One of the ones that is really very telling, between the orbit of Mars and Jupiter is the asteroid zone. And tens of thousands of these bodies have been found from 500 miles across down to boulders. And it's thought that there was a planet there at one time that somehow disintegrated, or material that never formed a planet. Anyway, in one of the Cayce readings, he talks about the fact that one of the worlds is missing. He pinpoints it as there in the asteroid zone, and that there was a great disruption. That is absolutely amazing. That he wasn't an astronomer. He had no science background.
Right.
And there's so many of these other readings like that.
Absolutely. And excuse me, you're going to be a featured presenter at the upcoming ARE Ancient Mysteries Conference, which of course is our most popular conference of the year. So I encourage everybody, if it's not already sold out by the time this airs, definitely make sure you attend that one. But can you tell us a little bit about what your presentation will be about?
Well, it'll be based on my book, Celebrating the Universe, and we'll be talking about the things we have on this show, why celebrate the universe, and how do we go about that. And one of the best ways is to become a stargazer. At heart, we're all stargazers if you look up at the sky at night. But I'll be going through those metaphysical benefits. We've talked about some of them. Others like expansion of consciousness, spiritual connection, the meditation, and so on. So I'll be going through some of those. And then the heart of the program is actually the Hubble Space Telescope images. We'll be starting on the Earth and going to the moon briefly. You rarely see pictures of the moon with the Hubble because it wasn't designed to work close up like that. All the way out to the almost 14 billion light year limit at the edge of the universe. And
Wow.
I believe one of the things we'll be talking about is life in space, and I'll be announcing 2 discoveries just recently made about life out there that is just absolutely mind-blowing. Brent, the Hubble, the Kepler space mission, named after the great astronomer Kepler, has found in its mission, it's looking at a tiny piece of the sky in the constellations Cygnus and Lyra and the summer Milky Way. Have discovered over 3,500 solar systems, not just a planet, a star with a planet, but whole solar systems. And of those 3,500, some 600 lie in what's called the Goldilocks zone, and that's where the temperature is not too hot, not too cold, and liquid water can exist. So that's really exciting, and one of the discoveries we just announced involves one of those planets.
Wow, that's incredible. And I know you said that you're going to reveal a couple of the latest findings at the ARE Annual Mysteries Conference, which is in October. Is there any other research that would be new that excuse me, that you could reveal to us? Of course, not revealing the 2 things that you're going to reveal at the Ancient Mysteries Conference, but any other research that most people are just unaware of that it really help you gain that cosmic perspective?
Well, one of them is it's partly theoretical, but it's partly based on observational cosmology. It now seems certain, get this, Brent, that the universe we're living in, this bubble of light, the universe extends outward from where we are. We appear to be at the center. We're not. 14 billion light years in all directions. So there is this bubble, 28 billion light years across. And by the way, I'd like to come back to the light year in just a minute. But
Yeah.
one of the discoveries is that it was theorized, there was circumstantial evidence, but there's now evidence that our universe is one of a multiple bubble universes. And you'll hear astronomers now not talking about the universe, they're talking about the multiverse.
Right.
And as Arthur Clarke said, it's a famous writer, it's like the bubbles that wash up on the seashore in the foam as the waves come in, continually appearing and disappearing. That we're living in an infinity of these bubble universes, which is just mind-blowing.
Wow.
But, Brent, in astronomy, talk about perspective, our minds cannot really wrap themselves around things like billions of light years. And
Right.
For the listeners and viewers, I just wanted to share one thought experiment. As Einstein was famous for this. He would often do experiments sitting in his study, in his mind, totally going inside the atom, out among the galaxies. And the light year is the distance a beam of light travels in 1 year. Most everyone knows that. It's traveling at 186,000 miles a second. So to put that in perspective, if you turned on a flashlight and the light could bend, it would circle the Earth more than 7 times in that second. If you pointed at the sun, it takes about 8 minutes. At the outermost planets, like out toward Pluto and so on, about 5 hours. And the nearest star besides the sun, 4 years. So it's a big number. It's the number 6 with 12 zeros after it. That's 6 trillion. Well,
Yeah.
we can't comprehend that because you can walk a few miles, you can drive a few hundred, you can fly a few thousand, but when you get to millions, billions, and trillions, forget it. Well, here's the thought experiment. If you were to sit down in your favorite easy chair, okay, and start counting the number of miles in a light year at the rate of 1 a second, 1, 2, 3, and so on, guess how long it would take you to count up to that number 6 trillion? It would take you 150,000 years. Years.
Wow.
Just to count the number of miles in a light year. There's no star within a light year except our sun. And we're now 14 billion light years out. So, again,
Wow.
borrowing from Star Trek, it's a big universe, Mr. Scott.
Yeah. That cosmic perspective is such a powerful tool.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I wanted to end on a personal question. I've been reading a book that's been just really mind expanding for me. It was something that I was aware of, these concepts and of course these wonderful figures. It's a book called Quantum Questions, and it's the mystic writings of what we think as the great quantum physicists: Einstein,
Mm-hmm.
Heisenberg, Schrodinger, Max Planck.
Right.
And I think it's so incredible that all these men who were doing these incredible theoretical experiments, and of course the mind experiments, where they were just always thinking cosmically, it actually brought them to bring Eastern religion and Eastern philosophy become very near and dear to the heart, because they found the connection between these
Yes.
multiverses and what, the inner workings of a black hole and exploring time space. All of these wonderful experiments that they were doing in a lab, they were able to link it to using their cosmic perspective to Eastern mysticism. And I think that's one
Yes.
of the most incredible things that you can gather from the life of these men, is that they were true mystics. And of course, I think you're right in line with that, which is it's incredible to have people like yourself who are helping to share and expand the mind of people, which is just unbelievable.
Thank you, Brent. Absolutely, the Eastern-Western connection is vital, and they did all become mystics, and the answers are there. Brent, maybe as an illustration, this is kind of interesting. The astronomers at the Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona, that observatory sits on the Hopi Indian Reservation, okay? And the Indians call, and Native Americans call the astronomers the long eyes or the big eyes because of their telescopes. And
Right.
astronomers there will come up with some of their new discoveries and sit down and share it with the Native Americans, and they already knew about it. They intuitively knew about it. It was not news to them. And it's come to the point where now we need to spend some time with these kind of people to see what they already know. Again, it's another Edgar Cayce scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that just sharing with the wisdom of an elder, personally
Mm,
having that experience in my life helped me gain that cosmic perspective, because they remember, they have
mm-hmm.
been taught, all the wisdom has been passed down, and they remember the knowledge that we had of the cosmos, and they have that wonderful perspective which we can of course gain from. And you share that as
Right.
well. Thank you so much for bringing that perspective.
Yeah, it's not all in the textbooks, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very,
One of
very
my
blessed to
favorite
have
quotes,
you part
Brent,
of the.
is
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
Mark Twain. He said, "School's fine, just don't let it get in the way of your education."
Yeah, I think Einstein had a very similar quote where he said, "Your education starts when you get out of school."
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jim, we're so honored to have you part of the family, and thank you so much for bringing that cosmic perspective to the world, because it's something that's very much needed in these tumultuous times. So thank you so
It
much.
is. Well, again, it's my
Absolutely.
privilege, to share the wonders of the universe with as many people as possible. And thanks to you for making it happen on the show.
Of course. Thank you for being on Reflection, Jim. This is truly an honor. So we look forward to seeing you in October at the ARE.
Okay, I'll look forward to it also. Bye bye.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Brent. I'm delighted to be here. It's snowing and sleeting outside here in eastern Pennsylvania, and I'm warm and comfy inside my home and happy to be here with you.
Excellent. Wonderful to hear. I wanted to start with a little bit of your background, and maybe if you could let us know how you first got involved with kind of the Edgar Cayce material in the ARE.
Well, as with everyone else, that's a story of synchronicity.
Yes, it is.
Essentially, I started doing what the Cayce people call inspired writing, what I then, for lack of a better word, called meditative writing in late 1987. And about 7 years later, in 1993, I found myself listening to meditative writings that said that something extraordinary was going to happen and that I would learn to do the process of meditation, which I had been urged toward by my meditative writings, but didn't really know how to meditate and hadn't pursued how. And then through a series of synchronicities, the ARE found me and I ended up in a study group. And at the very first meeting, we opened the Search for God text. And inside the meditation chapter was every single thing that my meditative writings had been telling me about light and the awakening of consciousness through meditation, and actually how it works in the body and consciousness. And I was completely sold at that point and have been sold
Wow.
ever since on Edgar Cayce.
Absolutely. And I wanted to talk a little bit about your book, Psychic Soul. And in it, you talk about how brainwave biofeedback is a scientific fast track to meditation. Can you explain to
It
our
is.
listeners why that is?
Yeah, and that's mainly because you are hooked up to 4 electrodes plus a ground that goes anywhere on the body. And the result of that is a dual hemisphere series of frequency bars that show what's actually happening inside your consciousness. Um, I work with the form of EEG biofeedback meditation, in fact, the only form in the world that shows not only what's happening inside the brain, but map the brains of thousands of advanced meditators, psychics, healers, spiritual adepts from different cultures. And the result of that was the formation or the understanding of an actual particular pattern where some brain waves are flat, some are extended, another category is extended also as much, and then another category extends outward. And that gives us a particular pattern so we can help people decrease what's normally the very active, busy mind brain waves and increase their sensory awareness so that they have this pattern, and then they're in a peak meditation state. And then we can say, well, actually, we don't give them direct feedback to begin with, although we can, and say you're in the exact pattern. But typically what we do is take them into a meditation for healing, transformation, or self-discovery, and they feel what it feels like to be in a peak meditation state. And once you feel that, you can remember how it felt and then bring yourself back into that state of consciousness just like that. That's why it's a fast track, is because people can say, then sit down in their meditation room and close their eyes and look for that feeling inside themselves, and that is the optimal brainwave state, and then they're in meditation. It's just that
Right.
easy, just that quick.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds wonderful. And it's
It
a
is.
beautiful, I guess, form of spiritual science, which I think is something fascinating, which you, of course, talk about. And I guess it begs the question, why during this time do we hear more than ever people talking about this idea of spiritual science or metaphysical science? It seems to be going on a lot.
That's a great question. I think that there is an awakening taking place these days in consciousness, and has been underway. Oh gosh, I don't want to say since the harmonic convergence of 1987, but for a lot of people that really was the startup. Of course, the Beatles brought meditation over here in the 1960s into the West. But ever since then, there's really been an awakening of awareness. Really, for most people, the point of meditation, which has caught on like wildfire, as you know, there are now yoga centers in every little downtown of every little town across the U.S.
Hmm.
The awakening of awareness that happens in meditation as you move into this open flow of consciousness with access to the clarity of the thinking mind, the sensory awareness of the daydreaming alpha mind, the subconscious mind's healing, and then the unconscious mind's you have a awakening of awareness in meditation, so that you come out of meditation and you externalize that state of mind. So we do it with the practice of silent meditation. But it can also be done in other ways, and the other ways include spiritual studies, intellectual studies, and with nature, or simply being excited about your path through life. Now, the
Right.
outer world has helped us immensely by having Eckhart Tolle on Oprah, by Gary Zukov, all of these wonderful teachers who have, it's kind of like the idea was kindled and then it caught fire in these different people. And as it caught fire, it spread out. And so now we have this huge network of people. And spiritual science is just not a dirty word. It's also understood by most people these days. There's this fabric that's like Indra's net, glittering, with consciousness and new ideas and excitement. That people are more than they ever realized they could be, and
Right.
everybody wants that to be true.
Absolutely. And of course, Edgar Cayce talked a lot about meditation in his readings, and you talk about how important that's been on your journey. He also referred to it as kind of the fast track to God. It's a way of communicating, getting that
Yeah.
dialogue open with God. And can you see evolutionary changes in consciousness through your work that you've done over the years that confirm this claim that it is kind of a fast track to God?
Yeah, and I see it in the ARE people. I'm a member of the field program that the ARE runs, and so I travel across the United States to give these one-day seminars, and I always bring my equipment to do a live demonstration, and end up booking these sessions with people. And this has been going on for several years, and rarely do I ever hook up an ARE member and not see a beautiful meditation pattern or that awakened mind pattern. That's that open flow of consciousness that you externalize. And the reason is
Right.
simple. Number one, everybody with the ARE understands the value and the benefits of meditation. And number two, everyone is doing the work of inner transformation. And that's what awakening is ultimately all about. That's really nothing else. Go
Right.
inside your soul, become aware not only of what needs to be transformed within you, but also how to better manage your relationships, how to become more creative. And so that awakening of awareness, number one, happens in a whole lot of ARE people. But also, I have this foundation called the Institute for the Awakened Mind, and I train awakened mind trainers to help other people awaken through biofeedback meditation. And I tell you, the quality of people that I'm training is just utterly astonishing. These are people who are experiencing and very beautifully managing the rise of Kundalini, who also do NLP, who are hypnotists working with personal transformation, and they're just coming from all parts of the world. And then, of course, I have individual clients who come to me from usually the United States, but sometimes when they're visiting here from other countries. And they're doing yoga and lots of personal transformation work. And I see nothing but good news for this planet. I tell you, I can turn on the TV and see something different, but I know that there's this amazing undercurrent where people really are waking up as never before at a very, very fast pace.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I guess it's an issue I cope with in my life where people who do have I guess you call it the mainstream news sources, and they're very much engulfed in them in their life, and they don't take the time to look at alternative news sources, or maybe they're not involving themselves in their personal journey as much as they feel they really could be. And so it's a matter of what you focus your mind. There really is a huge slew of incredibly positive changes and things that are taking place both inside and outside if you have the eyes to see it and you have the focus.
What you're saying is so incredibly true. Sometimes I'll, for various reasons, get away from my meditation practice and feel myself grow less spiritually connected. And the next thing I know, I'm watching TV and getting caught up and wrapped up in that whole thing. And a classic example for me was Hurricane Katrina, because I'm from Baton Rouge, so this happened to New Orleans. And I felt myself getting wrapped up in the news and then becoming judgmental and separate from my spirit and conflicted. And one day I caught myself saying, "What's the matter with all these crazy TV people?" And then I went, "No, what's happened to me?" And I went back down to my meditation room, and it was like I had these spikes of heat all over my body and in my energy field. And as I drifted down into those calm and still waters, it was like cool. And I went, "Oh wow, where have I been?" So everyone can slip and slide out of what we in biofeedback meditation call the awakened mind pattern, which is very much about being connected with your spirit. And I think it can happen on the level of mass consciousness as well. So I think it's just all about inner awareness and being calm and peaceful enough to know when your waters are in turmoil.
Yeah.
And then knowing how to do something about it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Which makes me think, why, in your experience, do you think so many people are having trouble with meditation? Because it is such a large movement that's really taking off, as you said, like wildfire. And I see that myself. But what are the blocks that you're seeing with people reaching these beautiful states of awakened mind?
Well, uncertainty about how to meditate, first of all. There's a lot of confusion about having an empty mind, about how to deal with random thoughts, about knowing whether you're in a meditation state, what it's supposed to feel like. There's so many different disciplines, and nobody sits down and tells you that there is a sense of luminosity, of pure mind, of pure spirit, and that thoughts may come in, but you have a great stability and continuity of consciousness, and it feels like you're opening up to this vast spaciousness that where you may become aware of energy, pouring into your energy field. And so for one thing, people don't know when they're in meditation, and that becomes frustrating. but and a part of that, of course, is not knowing that there are very simple techniques that we use in biofeedback meditation to help people clear the random thoughts, and that's simply to relax the back of the tongue and keep it relaxed, which stops thoughts, and simply to slow the breath from its usual rate of 7 to 17 or 8 to 18 breaths per minute, depending on who you listen to, down to 4 or 6, which kicks in the parasympathetic nervous system so that the mind and the body can become a single entity. And that drops people into meditation very fast. But I think that also a lot of the reason people don't meditate is simply that they don't realize the benefits, don't realize, they think, oh, if I go and sit down and meditate for 20 minutes, then I've lost that time. Not realizing that if you go and sit down and meditate for 20 minutes, then you're going to gain a whole lot of time, because then your mind is orderly, your emotions are calm, you have a higher perspective of how things need to be done, and you can prioritize them. Plus, your creativity is enhanced so that the whole day is smoother and more crystalline in quality. Those simple things, and but it's also true that once someone moves into a very deep and profound subconscious meditation, which is where we're guiding people in biofeedback meditation, that they get this stream of imagery and solutions about work projects and relationships and anything that they want to know. You know, Cayce talked about that. Often, if you're doing silent meditation, the information will come as soon as you open your eyes. But in awakened mind meditation, where we're having the thinking mind rounded and quiet and present, then those solutions stream up from the subconscious, which stabilizes the pattern, for one thing, and helps people externalize it into waking life. But also, the person emerges with all these great solutions and ideas that they didn't even know existed inside them. And when you move into that kind of meditation state, then the next time you're tearing your hair out, you know, and weeping with frustration about not knowing what to do next, maybe you're going to think, I should go meditate. And maybe you don't go do it. But about the third time your subconscious says, hey, remember me? Then somebody will go sit in meditation. And then it's no problem wanting to go back in meditation, because you know where your source is. You know where your highest and best self is. And you know how to get there. So those are the people, like the ARE people, like these higher consciousness people that I work with. Those people are going to go back into meditation. And in fact, before it's over with, they're going to start teaching about meditation, because, you know, they want to spread the word. I think that's the real nature of the undercurrent, is people who have found out the power and potential of their minds and their ability to self-evolve their own consciousness. And these people in turn become teachers. That's a part of it, is their service to others, which is also a characteristic of ARE people. That service to others makes them want to get out and say, you know, I don't want to evangelize. And they usually don't have to, because people see it in them. But they become teachers and healers. Yeah. They're the real power and thrust, I think, of this spiritual science, this shift in consciousness that's underway right now.
Absolutely.
Do you see
I couldn't agree
too?
more. On my personal journey, that's exactly what I've experienced. It's you reach a moment where you don't really there comes times, of course, where you can be a verbal teacher, but just being who you are and experiencing this and bringing that to the table, people will feel that shift, that change, that awakened mind that's bubbling up inside of you, and you carry it into every interaction that you have throughout the day, and people will start asking what's going on, and you don't have to reach out, they'll reach out to you typically.
Yeah, well said. And how wonderful. I could tell by your voice that you're quite young compared to me at 66. And, that's another undercurrent. So we have the undercurrent, but we also have this push that's magnifying, amplifying the power of this undercurrent because it's the young people joining. And we've never seen that before. When I was 27, I was a real mess. Even when I was 36, I was a real mess. But these days, I meet people who are in their 20s and 30s, and they have the consciousness of people who are much older, who have had much more life experience because they've tapped into their inner wisdom so young. They didn't have to learn the hard way like we did in the outer world,
Yeah, we are on the shoulders of giants. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I've had some very wonderful influences in my life, and people like yourself who have put in the work throughout their life. We have the added benefit of having access to the knowledge that you brought to the world, which has truly been a blessing in my journey. Is being able to read all these books and meet all these authors and go to their conferences, and that's a very special
Yeah.
thing that's available to us and available to everybody right now, but especially the younger generation has that resource.
Sweet, isn't it? That we all
Yeah,
have
it's
it.
wonderful.
No matter who we are, what age. It's really just a call, isn't it? Sometimes people ask me
It is,
how I
absolutely.
had this healing experience that I talk about sometimes, and I talked about in my book, the Psychic Soul book, where I had this agonizing pain in my lower abdomen, and went to a doctor who told me to come back the following Monday. I saw him on a Friday. He said, come back Monday during his lunch hour, and he would do this exam. And I gotten my little Carmen Gia left work on Monday to go and have this examination. And what I did right then is what anybody can do in or out of meditation that prompted this spontaneous illumination for me. And it was just that I sent out the call. I said, please don't let
Right.
anything happen to me because I'm the only one who can take care of my little girl. And people make a living these days on, oh, I have this path, take this journey, all you have to do is thus and such, follow these steps. When in actuality, it's just as simple as saying, I want to tune into this greater reality, this divine consciousness, and I can't do it on my own. Of course, AA knows this. I can't do this on my own, and I need to connect with my higher power because, of course, it's always there.
Right.
And this is the beauty. We didn't talk about this before, but this is very exciting, especially for the Cayce people and the Cayce work, is that this spiritual science consists of physicists, people who are geologists from every scientific field, and they're all saying the same thing, is that we're swimming around in this quantum soup of beautiful energy in which, as Kevin Tedeschi calls it, Akashic field. Some people say the 0 point field, whatever you call it. God is what I call it, and Cayce called it, in which everything is available. All insights, all solutions, all the source of healing, everything is right there. And it's just a matter of saying, I'm open to it. I want to do what's necessary to open so completely to it that there are no blocks in my way, that all of my stumbling blocks, as Cayce put it, turn into stepping stones. And once you send out that call and once you open up in that way, then all things are possible and only good things will come out of that. Yeah, don't you
Absolutely.
think?
Beautifully said. Yeah, thank you so much. Joining us today on the show is Judith Pennington, and we are going to dive right back into the topic we were discussing before of kind of the regenerative healing benefits that you receive from meditation and things like brain biowave feedback. I wanted to talk a little bit, Judith, about I was always taught that never underestimate the healing potential of the human body, and I think we've clearly shown that in our latest discussion. But I wanted to talk about what are the latest findings that you found in your research about just how true this statement of the healing ability of our human potential really is? What have you found?
Well, there are always spontaneous healings, but those are hard to map because they happen in the silence of meditation or
Right.
in some moment of illumination like what I experienced on the interstate that day, where I was just totally flooded with light. But understanding that that was possible, once I got the brainwave biofeedback equipment, I undertook some studies with Reiki healers. I went to them because I had direct connections to them. In fact, they just started showing up everywhere. So I followed that wave and started hooking up some people in New York City and here in Pennsylvania and different places. And what I found perfectly duplicated the research of Max Cade, the British biophysicist and psychobiologist who invented the mind mirror that I use, the brainwave biofeedback device, in 1976. And what Max found was that when you have a healer working with a recipient, that if the healer moves into an awakened mind pattern, then that pattern is transmitted to the recipient, and that is the cause of the healing. Suddenly the person's mind becomes united, the static clears. It's a pattern of tremendous body, mind, spirit coherence and an aha pattern. And that's when the body is best able to heal and restore itself, and does. Now, Max found in his studies that if he worked with a healer who was tired or just having an off day, then the recipient wouldn't have the same experience, wouldn't be as, they would say things like, well, it just wasn't the same today. And so one of his healers was Eileen McGarrett. And so he says, Eileen, you don't have your awakened mind? She said, I'm just so tired. I need a vacation. She went off for 6 weeks, came back, went back into her beautiful awakened mind pattern. The very same client says, oh, yes, there it is. So people can feel it. So I knew that going in.
Right.
So I hooked up 4 people simultaneously in one study and a recipient. And in another study, I hooked up 6 people or 7 people and the same recipient, and I watched their brainwave patterns, and it was extraordinary. It wasn't just the recipient who was being healed. I talk about this in the book. It was that the people who were the healers were passing around information and experiencing the healing themselves, because what we have here is really a resonant field. It's not like it goes like a laser. It's like the pattern that's in your brain, mind, consciousness is in your energy field, and it just resonates with the energy fields of everyone around you. And I could actually see their brainwaves patterns changed. And in the study in New York City with first 6 people and then a second study with 7 people, the people produce these gorgeous awakened mind patterns to start with. Which is that pattern of creative flow and peak performance. And then, the second, and their experiences were that they saw blues and purples, which are the frequencies of the theta subconscious mind. And the second study, there was a residual energy in the room in this woman's apartment, because when they started the healing, they started with an awakened mind patterns. They didn't have to progress into it to transmit the healing. They started with a diamond pattern, which is a progression toward the evolved mind circle of spiritual oneness and bliss. And this diamond is associated with purples and whites. And sure enough, after the healing session, I questioned each one of them individually, interviewed them, and one after another reported this purple and white light, and several of them said that they had the sense that there were beings above them, and they'd never had an experience like this before, but this field is highly amplified, so these things are more likely to happen in these situations. These beings were above them in another dimension and helping them. And 2 people reported that before they talked to each other, 2 separate people. So, so absolutely, healing is real. At this point, there are books about it and studies on it, but we can see their brainwave patterns shift. I'll tell you a story that I don't want to brag on myself, but then again, it's too good a story not to tell you. So
Absolutely.
I was in India working with a practitioner, training two awakened mind practitioners a few months ago, and the guy whose house I was staying in had an aura camera, and
Mm.
it was a very, very expensive one, tens of thousands of dollars, and you know how normally with aura cameras you place your hand on the hand things, the metal hands, and then they take your picture. Well, I
Hmm.
said, what would happen if I just placed my hand on it and kept my hands on it to see if it would change, if I could change the state? And he said, well, okay. So I put my hands on it and it came up blue purple. And I said, okay, so let me see if I can change the colors. And there was, a screen so I could see the colors that would have been photographed. And sure enough, I was able to change it through the whole spectrum of colors, all the way to solid white, which doesn't mean that I'm some great guru. It just means that I've been meditating for 3 decades at this point and know how to open up to the vastness of that field, which apparently is all white. And so that is another example then of why people are waking up now, because the technology exists to be able to track through this very aura camera biofeedback device shifts in consciousness. And who's not going to believe something that they can see with their very own eyes? So
Right.
yeah, for
Absolutely.
healers, they report individually what has happened to them during the meditation. They share impressions, and the fact that they are doing that says that they're all on the same wavelength, and that there is a hierarchy of wavelengths, and that different ones have different effects for different things that need to be healed. All
Right.
quantifiable nowadays, and I know you love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how that also reiterates the theme that we were talking about how in traditional Hindu and Buddhist thought, they've always had that transference between what
Yeah.
they would call the master, the guru, and their student, where they could transfer that awakened mind or that state of enlightenment
Yeah.
from one person to
Yeah.
another, which is great. It reiterates kind of taking the ancient knowledge and bringing it up to date with the most groundbreaking research, which is I love that, of course.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Perfect circle you've made there.
And I wanted to end on the final thing would be I want to discuss a little bit about the upcoming conference that you're going to be a feature presenter at. It's here at the ARE in Virginia Beach, and this particular conference is entitled Experiencing Sacred Inner Realms, Awakening to the Call of Your Soul. And this is from January 16th through the 18th. And I was wondering if you could give us a little insight into what your presentation will entail and what conference attendees can expect from it.
Yeah, so I am going to be an evening presenter, and we are going to look at the brainwave map of consciousness, I call it, that we've been talking about in this program. So people can, it's just like any other kind of map. Once you see where you are, where you're going, and how to get there, then it's a lot easier to reach a destination.
Right.
And so this is going to show people shortcuts to get down into meditation. We're going to have a PowerPoint show for that. But I'm actually going to keep it brief so we have more time for these deep state meditations that we've been talking about for self-discovery, healing, and transformation. Because also, as we've said here, the more often you go in, even if that's within the course of a 2-hour presentation, the easier it is for you to remember how to get there. So,
Right.
so yeah, it's going to be highly experiential, and it's going to be using all these same concepts from biofeedback meditation, and the joy and the pleasure of a resonant field, which is what the
Hmm.
audience will be. I've seen some fascinating things happen in these group seminars with this resonant field where for years we went through nobody having one certain kind of experience, and then 5 people had the same experience.
Oh,
And,
wow.
not explained by coincidence, if there
Yeah,
is such a thing.
absolutely. Love that. Well,
Yeah.
life is full of synchronicities, and
Isn't it?
People who get to attend the conference will be very lucky to have an experience with the brain biowave feedback. So we'll make sure
Yeah.
we give them all the information in the after the show to register for that and other conferences. So, Judith, I just want to thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure having you on the show and a delight sharing in all these topics with you. I can tell we could go on for hours about this. And
We could.
thank you so
We'll
much.
have to
Yeah,
get
thank you
together
so
for
much for
lunch.
joining us. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
That would
you
be
for your
wonderful.
great questions.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you for your
Really
time, and
fun.
thank you for so much for coming on Reflections, Judith. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll meet again.